a little bit behind in our lesson. We didn't quite finish off with the login stuff, so we still have to write the authentication script so that we can actually authenticate our users. We did finally reach the point where we can create a user, yay us, right? But now we need to be able to take that created user and give them the ability to log into our system. But we're also going to create some helper scripts and that. We have quite a bit to actually go over today. I'm going to aim for getting out at about 9:15 if we can. That's my aim. Only reason being is my daughter broke her leg yesterday. Yeah, she was playing tag and she went to tag the kid and she slipped and her one leg went over and stomped on the ankle of the other one. And there's a tiny little bone in, like, I guess when you're growing, right? There's this tiny little bone in your ankle, and if you snap it in half, which she did, it can actually cause your growth to stop in that leg, which means the leg will not continue to grow. So they're like monitoring it and everything and doing x-rays every 2 days and stuff. So kind of stressful. And then on top of that, on Saturday, my wife and I were driving over the bridge in Aurelia. That's where I'm from. We're driving over this bridge and this guy comes strolling out of a parking lot just like nobody's there. And we were 10 feet away from him. Slam into the side of him, T-bone him at about 50 kilometers an hour. Airbags deploy. Whole front end of the grill is all smashed in. So it's been an eventful freaking week between lag brakes and a car crash. But good news is I might get a new car. Hopefully. That's the good news out of it. What's that? Courtesy of the other guy. Well, courtesy of the insurance company mostly. But I'm sure they're going to gouge him pretty bad. But yeah, that's the way it goes. But yeah, what a week. So anyways, I'm going to aim for 9:15 because usually it takes about 20 minutes or so after that to go through and troubleshoot issues, which should put us about 9:45 by the time we get out of here. So yeah, let's dive right in. Let's head over to our Windows operating system here. And I'll start off where you're going to start off. And we'll open WAMP right off the get-go. So just type in WAMP in Cortana. Open it up, or use XAMPP if you're using XAMPP. Red, yellow, green. We'll go ahead and open up our IDEs as well. Don't worry about whatever project you have currently open in your IDE. Click on the little W, go to the www directory, go into COMP-1006, grab your lesson 4 directory, come on, and drag it on top of your IDE, and then it will open up inside your IDE. Or just go File, Open, and find that folder. That's also your option. The only reason I navigate that way is because then it's guaranteed that I'm getting the folder that's being delivered by Apache, and I don't wind up in some folder that has nothing to do with our app, right? So last week we finished off with these two files open. We had create.php open, which we had finished. We went through, we did all of our validation, validated that our fields weren't empty, validated that the email address was unique, validated that the password and password confirmations were equal to each other. We did some error handling where we actually created an error system so that we could pass errors on to the user and let them know when things were wrong. What else did we do? Then we actually finally inserted the user into the database. So we wrote our SQL statement, we collected all of our values and bound them to our parameters. And then in they went, and we redirected back to the user and said, hey, congratulations, you have created a brand new user. So if you go to your browser and navigate to localhost/comp-1006, and then click on your lesson 4 folder. At this point, if you go to register, you should be able to create a brand new user. All right, so if I create this new user and I hit submit, Sure enough, it says the registered successfully. If I want to just double check that that's true, I can always go to users, view all users, and I'll see my new user in the list, right? So I've got Yukon Cornelius, and he was created at 7:07 p.m., which is true because it's 7:07 p.m., right? So cool. So we have all these users, but now we have some issues. We have one issue is some of the issues are cosmetic, some of them are security based, okay? So we have two different groups of issues. Our cosmetic issues right now is that we have login, register, and logout all currently at the top of our menu, right? Which doesn't really make a lot of sense because the issue here is that if we're logged out, we should only be able to log in or register. But if we're logged in, then we should only be able to log out. So it's more of a user experience issue there, right? The other things like security issues are that we have user management options available to the public, right? So the public can actually create a new user. They can view all the users. They can actually go in and view sensitive data about that user. That's a security issue, and we need to address that as well. So we want to take care of that. We also want to take care of this My Profile, because right now it's actually not linked up to anything. When you click on it, it should go to whoever the current logged in user is to their profile page. So we need to take care of that as well. So in order to do all of that, if we go to login, you'll remember that we didn't get that far. I think we made it so that you can actually see this data, and that was about it. Nope, actually we're just getting errors because we still need to complete our authenticate.php page. Now I'm pretty sure we did go over the login form. I'll open it up just in case though. So I'm just going to open up login.php. Yeah, I think we did. This is just a simple form, right? We have an input for the email address for the user, and we have an input for the password for the user. So basically just a place for them to enter their pieces of information. They're going to submit that, and that's going to go to authenticate.php. Authenticate.php is going to be the brain behind all of it. That's going to basically verify that the user exists, verify that the password they provided us is actually the password that we have on file. And if all of that is good, then we're going to log them in by creating a session variable and put their user in the session variable and tell them they're logged in. Then all we have to do after that point is check the session and see if that session variable exists. If the session variable exists, then we know the user is logged in. If it doesn't exist, then we know they're not logged in, right? So that's how we're going to basically create that kind of mechanical logic. So the first step for us to do is to actually create the authenticate. So the user is going to fill out this form. They're going to hit submit. It's going to navigate to authenticate.php, and that's when we hit this page. And that's where we need to actually follow the logic in here. All right, step one, it says create a message system, but actually step one is for us to, no, actually that is step one, create a message system. I can't remember if this is the class or not, where under our connect.php page, some of us have these as an anonymous function, like an IFI, that automatically calls, and some of us have this as a function called connect. We'll have to, okay, so we do have both in this class. I didn't do that in the other ones, and I kind of wish I hadn't done it in this one as well, so we'll have to address that when we get to that point. All right, so under authenticate.php, a lot of this is going to seem very familiar because a lot of it reflects the same stuff we did, same kind of logic we did in the create.php page. You're going to find that as we continue on through and we build more files and stuff like that, a lot of this logic just replicates over and over and over again, which is great because it'll become muscle memory to you. And the other thing too is, despite the fact that we're using PHP, that pattern that we're using crosses over into every programming language that has to deal with web interfaces. It's whether you're using JavaScript, Ruby, ASP.NET, doesn't matter. It's all basically the same type of principles, right? All right, step one, create a message system. So we're going to create a variable called errors, and we're going to make it hold an empty array. And then as we have errors, we'll add them into the errors array. Step two, we're going to initiate our Flash messaging system so that we have it on board. So first, we need to make sure that the session is started. So we're going to do session status. right? So if it is equal to PHP session none, meaning there's no session currently started, then we will session start, right? So if our session status says that our session is currently not running, then we'll make sure we start our session so it's running. We have to do that, otherwise we cannot access session variables, right? They will not work. After that, we'll just initiate our slash session variable, which will store our error messages and success messages and any other message we decide to create. So when the user fills out the form to log in, they're going to supply us their email address and their password. Both of those are going to come through to us as raw text. So the first piece that we're going to do is we're going to validate the user supplied email to make sure it is the correct format. And if it's not, then we can send back an error message saying this is in the incorrect format. And then we're also going to sanitize the user supplied email. The sanitization check will just basically make sure that when we go to plug it into our SQL command, we're not just plugging in any random data, right? We'll strip out any script tags or anything like that, okay? So to validate the email, we'll just write a simple if condition with a not operator. So if it's not valid, so filter var, we'll give it the supplied email address, which will be in our post super global, right? And we'll provide one of the filter constants, validate email. Nice and handy there, right for us. And if it's not valid, then we'll add a new error. Like so. This email is not in a valid format. So our other checks that we're going to do after this are all going to happen after we connect to the database. So if we have any error stops in our code at this point, it's a good idea to actually redirect the user back to the form now, as opposed to connecting to SQL and going through all that when we already have an error that exists, right? So we want to be a little bit more efficient, because every time we connect to the database, it's a little bit costlier, right, than just dealing with it currently. So basically what we'll do is if the error exists, right, so we can do an if check, if count, $errors. We are going to build a helper for this today. Is greater than 0. So if there are any errors whatsoever, then we'll take our session, slash, we'll create a new key called danger, and we'll make it equal to the current errors array. While we're at it, we'll also add in the form data. Even though we're not going to actually take their password and populate their password, all we'll do is populate their email address back for them, which is kind of nice of us. We don't necessarily need to do this. And to do that, all we have to do is signpost to it. Nice and easy. Then we'll redirect. It's actually weird to like look at the screen and type, like at the projector. It's an odd arrangement. And we're going to relocate them to not users, sessions with an S, login.php. So we'll just send them back to the login form. And then we'll exit, which will terminate the script at that point. Now, incidentally, this is a bit overboard, because we're checking here to see if the email address is valid anyways. if it's not valid, we're already executing invalid logic, right? So we're executing logic based on the fact that the email address is not valid. We could just move this block that's inside this if condition into here, and we would accomplish the same process. I'm just doing it to reflect what we did in the create script, so it seems more patternistic for you. Plus, we're actually going to take this whole block and turn it into a function today anyways, because we type it out so many times, and we're going to type it out so many more times. So. All right, so we have our validation for our email. We're redirecting if there's an error, right? So if the email is not in a valid format, we could stop, save, and test, but there's really no reason to because we typed this out already before. We understand how that process works. So our next step is to sanitize the user-supplied email. We'll do that by just basically overwriting the post email with the result of filter var post email, filter sanitize, so one of the sanitizers, sanitize the email. So that will basically go through, remove any extra spaces at the beginning or end. It will strip all script tags that are inside there. So not just JavaScript script tags, but any HTML as well. It will strip it all out. It will escape special characters. It will go through that whole process. Filter sanitize emails are living a little bit more verbose because if there's characters in there that are not valid in an email address, it will actually remove them. So all characters that are not valid will get stripped out. No. So that'll sanitize the email address. Now we're ready to actually check and verify whether or not the user is there. So we do this kind of in two steps. We reach into the database and we grab the user based on the email address. So we say, hey database, give me the first user you find that has this email address, and we pull back that user. If we have the user, then we're ready to then verify the password. If we don't have the user, then we just leave and we come back and we tell them that their password and email combination are incorrect. We give them as little information as possible. We never do specifics. We never say your email is incorrect, but your password's okay, right? We want to give them as little information as possible. So our first step is to actually go and get the user. So I'm going to scroll down a bit. And there's a whole bunch of processes here in step 4, and I'm actually just going to remove all of these comments because there's so many of them. So our first step is to create our SQL command. Our SQL command should be fairly easy for you to remember. It's just select star from users where email is equal to :email, because we're going to use a bound parameter. So that's just a string with our SQL statement in it. That's all that is. Now we can go ahead and prepare it. Now this is the step where we need to remember how we're connecting to our database. Some of you are using a connect function, right? So some of you will need to do this step, and some of you will not because some of you are using an IFI. So the way to check, open up connect.php, and if you have a variable up here called con and it is equal to a function with no name, then you don't need to do anything. You already have access to con. If you don't have that, and instead you have a function that says function connect, then you're going to need to call the function, which means you'll have to type it out this way. So if you have an IFI, an instantly invoked function execution, then you don't need to call that. If you do have a function with a name, then you need to call the function with the name. Okay? I don't need that, but I'll comment it out so that way you guys can see it there, because I have an IFI. All right, so our next step is to prepare our statement. So we do that by $con, prepare, and we pass it the SQL string. So that's going to take the SQL string, it's going to prepare the statement, and set us up to actually bind in our values. Next, we actually do the binding, right? So bind param. We type the parameter exactly as it's written inside our SQL string. So it's :email. We give it the value we want to bind, which is email. And then we tell it the data type we want it to be, which is string. Whoops. After we're done that, we can actually go ahead and execute the whole command. So we just do stmt, execute. That will execute the SQL. And now we're ready to actually go and grab the user data itself. So we're going to create a variable called user, $stmt, fetch. And fetch will return the first record it encounters. So hopefully you're starting to get used to that process of those 4 steps. Sorry, I guess it's 5 steps actually. Create your SQL statement, right? Prepare your SQL, bind any parameters you have defined, execute your SQL, and then fetch your results. So those are your steps. So now we're going to actually check to see if the user exists, because if we do a fetch and for some reason this returned nothing, this is going to actually contain a Boolean value of false. So we can use that as part of our if condition to check whether or not we got a user back. That will tell us if the user exists or not, right? Obviously, if we're logging in, we want the user to exist. That's super important. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to log in. So I'm going to wipe out these current comments just because they're in my way. I'm going to write if $user, so if not user, meaning the user does not exist. In other words, I got a false. Or we're going to use a function here called password verify. Password verify and password hash are very handy functions to us. Password hash, as you'll remember from last week, takes a raw text password, right, and converts it into a hash. And then we can store that hash in the database. That way we're not storing raw text. You might also remember that that is one-way encryption. So it encrypts in one direction. You can't decrypt it. There's no way to get it back to what it was. So if your password was called test, you can go from test to the hash, but you can't come from the hash back to test, right? Not without a lot of difficulty. Because of that, we need some sort of function to compare a raw text password to the hash that is currently stored. So PHP provides us a function called password verify. Password verify takes 2 arguments. It takes the raw string password that you want to use and the hashed password, okay? So the raw string password will be under $_post password, right? Because that's coming back from the form. And then the password hash, we can grab from the returned user record under the password key. And to make this all work, we want to put the not operator in front of password verify. So password verify will only return a Boolean, no other information. It's either going to return true or false. So what we're basically saying here is if there's no user or their password could not be verified, then execute whatever logic we need to execute inside here. So obviously our logic is going to be the whole error handling logic that we normally do, right? So we're going to have $_session / danger equals there was an error in validating your email and password combination, or whatever error message you choose to give, be as vague as possible. $_session form data, so we'll send back the form data, equals post, right? Our header to relocate, and we'll send them back to the login.php page, which is a public page anyways, and then we'll exit. So if the user does not exist or their password cannot be verified, we're going to give them a very vague message of there was an error in validating your email and password combination. And we're doing this intentionally to make it difficult for a user who is, or a hacker, who is running through a database of dictionary emails and passwords that have been known as vulnerable, and they're trying them against our account to see which combinations will work, right? We want to give them as little information as possible. So if we just say one of these things didn't work, then it doesn't tell them that the email exists, and it doesn't tell them that the password exists, right? They don't get any more information than they need to know. Not that it entirely stops them, because they could always just try to create multiple users and see which users exist. So they can always go that route, which they do. There are ways around that too. We can actually create a counter that basically counts how many times a person attempts something, and if they try to attempt it too fast, we can block them based on that. So our next step is to set a session variable to verify the user is authenticated and to unset the user password. So we're going to rewrite that so that I can kind of explain what's happening there. So we're going to take the user. So this is, we're past this error message. Everything is golden. We're good. We want to actually log the user in. And the way we're going to log the user in is we're going to take advantage of how the global session variable works. The global session variable persists for the whole lifespan that your browser is open, right? Because of that, if we were to add a value into there, we can just check it over and over again, no matter what page we're on, no matter how many requests we've gone through, we can check it to see if that value exists. If that value exists, then we can kind of safely say the user is logged in, right? If the value does not exist, then we can assume the user is not logged in and they're logged out. So the first step we're going to do before we do that, I want to assign the whole user row to the session, but I don't want to store their password in there. Even though it's hashed, it doesn't matter. I don't want to store the password in there, just in case we wind up with a man-in-the-middle attack and they hijack our session. So we're going to do an unset. Unset allows us to unset the value of a variable. It literally renders it as undefined. We're going to do $_session. Nope, we are not going to do that. We're going to do $user, password. So that will unset the password from the user row. It doesn't remove it from the database, just this variable is currently storing that information. Then our next step is to take that user object and put it, user associative array, and put it inside our session global. So we'll create a session key called user. I mean, why not? Makes sense. And we'll make it equal to $user. And then after that, we can do step 7, which is return the user to their profile page. We're not going to do that, actually. We're going to return the user. No, yeah, we're going to return them to the profile page. That does make sense because they logged in. That's a good place to start. And the nice thing is it doesn't really matter if they're the administrator or they're a general user. Returning to the profile page is applicable to both accounts anyways. So I think it makes sense, just kind of covers everybody. So we are going to first add a success message. You have successfully logged in. Then we'll add a header to relocate them, and then we'll exit. In the header, we'll do location, dot base path, dot users, show.php, question mark ID equals, and we'll grab the session ID by just grabbing user ID. There we go. Not the session ID, sorry, the user ID. So next week, we'll likely be doing edit, update, and delete for a user. And then the following week, we'll start dealing with creating a parent and child relationship through posts and comments. We're actually going to wind up with 2 parents and 1 child, because we'll have a user will own a post, and a post will own a comment, but a comment can be also owned by a user. So it's kind of like a round robin a bit. All right. If you save that and you've got everything in place, you should be able to go log in, and it should bounce you back to the show profile page and with a message at the top saying you have successfully logged in. Is anybody still typing this out before I switch over to the browser? No? 1 person? Okay, I'll wait. What's the error?
Error call to unidentified function executes, and then it has my where it is in WAMP.
Are you doing it from STMT execute? Let me see. Do you have your connection variable?
I have the same one
Con?
that you have.
Yep.
You have con. But it's also doing it in the create file, and it keeps saying my error is where my execute is. Wherever my execute is. There at first was the creation, so I haven't been able to register a person yet. So I was hoping I could just continue and then figure out the error later.
You have params, bind parameter. Can I see your error?
It's weird because I even gave him my code and still giving him error.
Undefined function execute. On line 49. Using WAMP, right?
Everything else prior has worked and everything like that, but now even register won't work. It shows all the classic other stuff, so if I don't put parameters in here, it gives me all the warnings and stuff.
Yeah.
Right, but if I actually can't use that. Oh, I can change it a bit. Okay. Same thing.
No, that was different. You're getting a colon not found password in field list. So that's different because it's trying to find this password in your field list, but it doesn't exist. Let's go see your database for a second under PHP MyAdmin.
MyAdmin?
Yeah.
Where's MyAdmin?
PHP MyAdmin. If you go back to WAMP for a second.
Oh,
yeah, and click on it, and then click PHP MyAdmin at the top there. Username is root. No password. Click on the COMP-1006 directory. And click on users for me. And then click on structure. So you have a very old database.
For what, PHP MyAdmin?
No, you have a very old database from like week 2. We imported a new database, which replaced a lot of these with like password and a whole bunch of other fields. I have a funny feeling that might be your issue. So if you go to import, and yeah, browse.
And where did we get it?
Go to lesson 4 because I think I included it in the lesson 4 folder. Should be just called COMP-1006. Yeah, there it is, COMP-1006. And hit open. Scroll to the very bottom. Hit go. Cool. Jump back to your application.
Everything should save there.
Hit refresh. Or yeah, that works too.
Give it a name, change.
You won't need to change anything really, but there you go.
All right. So
it was just missing the fields you needed, but that error message was super weird. That it's just saying execute error. Because that's not what the issue was. It was missing a column. That's what the issue was. You're getting an actual PHP error, or sorry, a MySQL error, and then it just wasn't handling it correctly, which is kind of bizarre. All right, so I'm going to jump over to my browser and see if I can actually authenticate, because there's no point in me helping you if you're not able to get in if I can't even get in. So click submit. Yep, I've successfully logged in, and I'm at my profile page. All right. So I'm able to successfully log in. However, you'll notice we still have some issues. We have the logic issues, right? So we can see login and register, but I'm logged in. So I shouldn't be able to see login and register. That doesn't make any sense. The other thing too, the other issue, which is kind of a big issue, is because we're using sessions, this stays persistent until I close the whole browser, right? Which means I'm stuck logged in. I can't get back out if I need to until we set up log out, which we're going to need to do now. The good news is log out, super easy, only about 8 lines of code. It's really, really small. So let's think about the logic behind this. To basically set up that we're logged in, we create a session variable, right, called user, and we store information inside of it. So in order to log out, all we have to do is destroy that session variable. Second it's gone, we're logged out, right? Makes perfect sense to me. All right. I can assume by the constant talking that there's definitely an issue with everybody's code. All right, why don't we take a break then? I'll take a 15-minute break and I'll help you with your code because we definitely got to get past this spot. You can come up here. I'll meet you at this table. Here, I'll stop this so you guys don't have to listen to a half hour's worth of authentication. And everybody's authentication works. And we get to this one screen, right, where when we log in, so I'll just log in as asdf.com with my password ASDF. You have successfully logged in, but there's nothing really telling you that anything has changed, right? We can still see users. We can still see my profile. We could see those before. We can still see login, register, and log out. Nothing has actually been modified to tell us that anything is different. So in order to actually see whether we're logged in or logged out, we need to modify our interface and deal with the fact that we can still see things that we shouldn't see when we're logged in. So we'll do that now, but we're going to create our first helper. This is a common process. To avoid having to type complex code over and over and over again, we create little helper functions that make it a lot easier for us to do common tasks. One of the most common tasks we're going to be doing is checking to see if we're authenticated. And another common task we're going to do is check to see if we're the administrator level. So because we're going to be doing that so often, it makes sense to make them functions and then just use the functions to do the check, right? So under our includes folder up here at the top, now I'll collapse my other folders so it's easier for you to see. Actually, I can just click this button. So under my includes folder, I'm going to create a new file called _ Authentication Helpers.php. It's kind of a difficult one to spell. Call it auth helpers if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure that when we include it, you include the correct file. This file is going to be strictly just a PHP file. So we'll put the opening PHP tag in it, and then we'll just let it do its thing, which is explicitly or implicitly close it on its own. We won't bother adding the closing tag. We don't need to because it's just a PHP file. So as I was saying before, our whole logic, our whole mechanics behind this whole process is basically if there's a session variable called user, our user is logged in. If there isn't a session variable called user, then our user is logged in, right? That's literally the whole logic behind it, not exactly rocket science. So all we need to do is check to see if that stupid variable exists. If it exists, then we know the guy's logged in, right? So our first step is to make sure our session is started. So we'll do the session status check. See if it's not started. And if it isn't, we'll do a session start. So that's our first step, to start our session. And then we're going to write two functions. Our first function is going to be called function is auth. And our second function is going to be called function is admin. Now, the way I treat PHP, and many others I know do the same thing, if my function begins with an is underscore, I expect the function to return a Boolean. Okay? So in other words, is auth is a question. Is auth? It's either yes or no. That's the only two answers I expect. There's no maybe, there's no other return value. So it should just be a Boolean return. Anytime I add is underscore, it should be a Boolean return. Ruby actually makes that a lot easier by giving you the question mark operator that you can add to a symbol name. So I could actually go like that and add a question mark, and that would be valid symbol naming, which makes it very clear that it's a Boolean return. I mean, not as clear as Java when you just write returns Boolean, but as clear as we're going to get. So we created a new file under includes called underscore Authentication Helpers. So the logic in here, like I said, super simple. Just check to see if the session variable exists. And because all we're doing is checking to see if it's set, I'm literally just going to return is set, which will actually tell me if a variable is set or not, and it returns a Boolean anyways, is set $_ session user. Super easy. Is the variable set? Yes or no? The is a min one is just as easy, right? But it's going to have two steps. So I'm going to return is auth. I'm going to literally call the function I just defined. And $_ session user role equals admin. Whoops. Now what's interesting is this will actually cause this whole statement to return a Boolean. So reliably return a Boolean. So either are you authenticated? Are you an administrator? Those are the questions we're asking. We could write a third function to check to see if it's just a general user as well if we wanted to. Or we can just write the reverse of is and min, right? Because we only have two roles. Cool. So our next step, just to simplify this even further, because I don't want to have to call these functions every time, what I can do is I can actually define constants, and then on every single request, those constants will be set with the value of whatever the function return value is. So they will automatically, because constants can be defined on every request, which is good. So all we'll do is just define them on every single request with these function calls. Nice and simple. So we're going to do that in config, but I'm going to give you a second to finish writing that out. And we're going to include this file in our _config file. That way it gets included on every single page. And if you haven't been so far, you should be including the _config file on every single page. Because it's going to contain all of our helpers. We're also going to write a redirect function too. All right. So I'm going to go to my _config.php file. I'm going to get rid of this closing brace. It's no longer really needed. And I'm first going to create auth and a min constants for authentication checks. So constant defining inside PHP is a bit bizarre. It uses a function to do it. The first argument you give it is the name of the constant. And then the second argument you give it is the value. There we go. Now let's see if you can see my mistake. It's not in the constant definitions. They're fine. In fact, all the code on there is fine, but this page will definitely return an error. Nope, that's actually allowed if the whole page is just PHP. Yeah, it's kind of handy because then you don't need that closing bracket. It has to do with the fact that I'm calling two functions that are missing something very crucial. Think about any programming language. If I call a function, yeah, the Authentication Helpers page, yes. I can't call a function unless it has a definition, right? That's every single functional language you'll ever work with in your life, right? I can't call a function if I haven't predefined it, which makes sense, right? We have predefined it in another file, but this file doesn't know about that file yet. So we need to actually include that file in here. We don't want to include it too many times, so we'll just include it once. That way, if it gets included, and then for some reason the file gets added again, we don't have to worry about it duplicating the code again. So root dot includes / authentication helpers.php. And that will give us our two helpers. Now, usually I go through and add these two pieces into everywhere, but we'll create the other helpers file first because it was actually handy to have the functions available to us right away. So I'll just wait for you to finish typing that out. The rest of you can go ahead and create an _helpers.php under the includes directory. All right, so we're going to right click, new file, _helpers.php. We good? Okay. We'll open it with PHP. We don't need a closing bracket because it's implicit if it's only PHP inside the file. And we're going to create a new function, and it's going to make our lives so much easier, called redirect. And it's going to accept one argument called path. And it's literally going to be the code that we keep writing everywhere. It's going to be header, location, Actually, why don't we use string interpolation? We don't do it enough. Location. And we exit. 2 lines of code. Super easy. So just a very simple redirect function. So we have some authentication helpers, and we have a redirect function. We can now handle basically all of the authentication process inside our application. Meaning, if they're not supposed to be on a page, we'll just redirect them from the page altogether, right? Security fixed, totally handled. And we do that everywhere they're not allowed to access something. We just redirect them away from there so that they can't do any damage on that page. If they don't need to see something visually because it doesn't make sense for them to see it, we can use our auth and our admin functions to be able to hide and show things, right? Just by using conditional logic. So that's going to be our next step. I think the best place to start is if I'm logged in, I shouldn't see login and register. Doesn't make sense from a user's experience, right? You shouldn't see login and register if you're already logged in. That's confusing. So we'll go ahead and get rid of those. Open up your main nav. I'll collapse my sidebar. Oh, wait, actually, we forgot one step. Sorry, my apologies. Go back to your config.php. And we need to include our new helper file. Sorry about that. There, we'll include the helpers file so that we have it. Then we can redirect all we want. All right, cool. Let's go back to our nav, the main nav, and we're going to scroll down to where it says, it's about line 37. It says log in, register, and log out. And what we'll do is we'll create a new line above this first LI on line 36. And we're going to create an inline if condition. We're going to take all of these LIs in here and tab them over. And then close that condition. The condition is going to be basically if not authenticated, so not auth, then show these. Now, obviously, currently the logic will show all 3 of these, which I don't want. So I'm going to need one other piece of information right here to prevent that. And that will be this else statement. So you're going to write this, this, this. Hi, what's up?
Have you found a mouse pad and a mouse?
I haven't. Oh, there you go. No worries. So just those 3 lines. If you're not authenticated, show these 2 LIs. Otherwise, show the logout LI. Which makes sense. If I'm not authenticated, I need to log in or register. Those are my only 2 options, right? But if I'm logged in, then I should only have to be able to log out. That's it. So now to go check, just open up your browser, hit refresh. If you're logged in, you should see login and register disappear. And if you're logged out, which isn't actually working, we're gonna have to build logout to actually log out. If it's not working, make sure that not operator on line 36 there in front of the auth is there, right? Because that means not authenticated, which makes sense. If I'm not authenticated, then I need to become authenticated. So I either need to register for an account or log in. That's my only option. However, right? Another good word is else, right? However, if I am authenticated, then I should only see logout. Cool. Did it work for you? Awesome. So we have a few other pieces here. The only person allowed to edit users, modify users in any way, create new users when they're logged in, because if you're not this level, you can't create new users if you're logged in, is administrators. They're the only ones allowed to manage users. They're also the only ones allowed to see other users in the show profile. So if you go to show right now, you can simply modify that number and you can see other users. Obviously, that is a security issue. The only person allowed to do that should be the administrator. So we're going to have to write some interesting logic to basically stop that from happening so that only certain people can see it. But for now, we'll just do the cosmetic pieces that are in our navigation. So if you scroll up a bit, we have this whole drop down from line 24 to line 32. If you highlight that and tab it in, we're going to write another if condition around it. And this if condition is basically going to say if admin. That's literally all it needs to say. If you are the admin, then you should be able to see any of the user editing possibilities. If you are not an administrator, you should not be able to edit a user. At the very minimum, you shouldn't be able to see the navigation for it. So there's another link on that page. I just want to see if you guys can find it. There's another link on that page that doesn't make sense for the general public to see it. You need to be at least logged in order to see it. Does anybody know which one of those links should be hidden if you're not logged in? What's that? Yes, my profile, 100%. Because a public user shouldn't have a profile anyways, so it doesn't make sense for them to see it. So what we'll do is, again, we'll tab this guy in. We'll wrap it in an if condition. And the if this time, simply just an auth check. Are you authenticated? That is literally all we care about. Are you actually authenticated? Now we have one more thing to edit. Our profile button has actually never worked. We never set it up to work because we never filled in the one major important detail, which is an ID. We've never given it an identifier. We need to make sure it has an ID so that it can navigate and load up that user. It's in the name, right? My profile, which means it should be my user ID, right? If we're logged in, we can access the user ID by simply accessing the session variable that contains our user. So if you put your cursor just after the equal sign, and we'll write an inline echo statement, and the variable we're going to give it to spit out is session user ID, like so. So you're writing this. Careful of spaces. Write it exactly the way I wrote it, otherwise you're going to have some issues. So that will take the user that is currently saved in the session. It'll access that user and it will spit out their ID using that inline echo statement. So now our actual profile link has a proper path. And we can guarantee that that session exists because we know that auth wouldn't exist unless the session was available. If we can check the auth, then the session definitely exists and there's a user definitely there. So we can guarantee that. All right, so go ahead and save that. Jump back to your main page, hit refresh. And some things should disappear. So if you're not logged in as an administrator, the users should disappear on you. If I jump to contacts and I go back to my profile now, it should go to your profile page though. But we still can't log out, right? So why don't we create the logout, because we're going to need to test the next functionality as both an administrator and a general user. We're going to have to toggle between the two users. So we're going to want to make sure that we're logged in as both users. And I'll show you how to log in as two separated accounts. So we're going to jump back here. We're done with this page right now. I'll copy it. I'll open it into Slack and paste it so that you have it just in case you missed any of it. Incidentally, when you're copying this stuff, I think I've said it before, a lot of the times it adds these weird new return characters. I don't recommend copying and pasting out of Slack. Instead, click the little download link, download it to your computer, and then copy and paste it out, and you'll never have an issue. There you go, it's up there. So it's this little thing right here that says download, little icon. Make your life a lot easier. All right, so before we get into this, like I said, we're going to need to be able to log out. So I want to get log out working. So let's open up the logout page. I've already created it for you. The good news is it's only a little bit of code. We don't really have that much code to write. Step one, we're going to start and assume the session. If it doesn't, why does that say assume? Resume the session if it doesn't exist. Need to do less drugs, I think. All right, so we're going to do if session status is equal to PHP underscore session none, which I mean by this point you probably have memorized, right? Session start. Did somebody say no? That's funny. No, I don't. I forget everything when I leave this class. That's in general, right? I never forgot my coding classes. Those I tend to remember. It was the communication gen eds that were completely pointless and useless that I forgot all the time. I don't remember anything from any of those classes. None of my gen eds. Don't remember a single thing from any of them. Except for that the workload in the gen eds was way worse than my regular course classes. I was like, you're overachieving. You teach a gen ed. Why do you need to do so much work? That's it, right? Like you think about the homework they're assigning you and how 15 pages. I had personal finance, and we had to do a 15-page project, which was basically mapping our finances over the whole course of the thing. It was like 15 pages with a write-up and everything inside of it, like university level type work. And I'm like, there's no way you're marking 80 15-page essays. There's not a chance. You're looking at the last page, reading the conclusion of the essay, and going 80, 74. That's all you're doing. Step 2, unset the session variable we're using to check if the user is logged in. Makes sense. In order to basically make the user logged in, we create a session variable. To log them out, we simply unset the session variable. So unset $_session user sayonara. They're gone. Then return the user to the home page of the site. We'll do a nice little message, right? We'll say $_session / success equals you have successfully logged out. And then we'll use our redirect function because we built it, right? So we'll just redirect, and it's available to us because it's in this config file here. Redirect, base path. Actually, just base path, right? We'll send them right back to the home page. So just redirect to the base path. How many lines is that? I mean, that you actually wrote? 4 lines altogether? Very easy for logouts. Mostly because we don't care. Logout literally is the most indifferent piece of code you'll ever write. It doesn't care. It doesn't care that you're authenticated, right? I mean, if you want to go to the logout page 9,000 times, go for it. I don't care. It makes no difference to my application if you log out 9,000 times. I don't care if they go to logout. I don't care if the session user actually exists. It doesn't matter to me at all. Nothing in this page is doing anything destructive in our application, causes any security holes or flaws. Makes no difference to me. So it can be a nice, quick 4 lines of code, and we're done. So once you have that written, if you jump back to your application, click your logout, it should redirect you to the home page and tell you successfully logged out. And you should see the login and register buttons, and the logout button should disappear. So should profiles, so should users, everything should disappear. That's authentication based. All right. Anybody still typing this out? No? That person is. I'm going to wait. Are you still typing it out? Okay, I'll give you a few minutes there to finish it off. Doesn't take long to spend a whole class, though. 8:50, and we're not quite done. Our whole class will be basically just cleaning up our authentication. So this authentication, when it's finished, you guys can literally take this whole thing and plug it into your project, right? So just take your whole users folder, the whole sessions folder, and plug that into your project, copy the SQL over, and you're ready to go. And you have a whole authentication system. All right, jump over to the browser. Just refresh, don't know why, it's not really necessary. Click log out. You have successfully logged out. I have login and register. I have no profile, no users, right? I am logged out. I am entirely out. I can see my house, I can go to About Me, I can go to Contact Me, but I cannot access any other types of pages, right? So that's not entirely true. While I can't access the pages from here, from a navigation perspective, I can just type them right in. Now I'm accessing authenticated based content that I should not have access to whatsoever. Only an administrator should ever have access to this. So this is where we need to start thinking that our navigation, just making our navigation disappear, is not security. That is purely just doing something in the favor of the user, the user experience thing. Blocking them from accessing the page entirely, that's security. And we need to do that not only for the index page, but the show page and all of our forms that we're going to create, and then also the script pages as well, because people can bypass forms and send post data directly to a script, right? So we need to also make sure we block it there. So a whole bunch of pages. The good news is most of the code is identical and it's just copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, right? But we need to keep that in track. So let's lock access to the index page so users can't access the index page. So I'm gonna close this off. I'm gonna open up, and make sure you open up the right index. I've had issues where people are opening up the root index, which is our home page of our application. The index you need to open is under users index.php. So it's under the folder users index.php. And if you're on the right page, you can see that step 8, check if the user is authenticated and is an administrator, which we're going to do in this spot. We're basically going to say if not authenticated and not an admin. So it's not good enough to just not, actually we don't need to do that. We can just do not admin because it already checks to see if you're authenticated. So if you are not an admin, redirect, base path. So in other words, if you're not an administrator, go home. That's what's basically happening in that line. And why don't we just make this nice and tight? Because it only needs to be one line. There's no reason for it to be across multiple lines. Pretty simplistic. So the only person allowed to access the users list, which is considered user management, is the administrator, which makes sense. Imagine if somebody could access your Facebook or any other person's Facebook, right? That would not be good. That would be bad. However, if you call Facebook, which you're not likely going to call them, but if you email them, the person on the other end of the line, if they need to provide you support, they will need to be able to access your Facebook. And they should be able to do that without you having to provide your login details. In fact, if the person on the other end of the line asks you for login details, don't give them to them. That is super weird. They shouldn't be doing that, and they're likely a hacker. All right, so very simple. If you're not the admin, I'm going to redirect you back to home. So let's test it. Jump back to your page. All you have to do is hit refresh, and boom, we're back to home. If I try to type users in there, users, boom, still back to home. I can't access that page now. It is impossible for me to get there unless I'm logged in as an administrator. We should test that. So I don't know if you have an administrator account. I have one. And sure enough, I can access the page. Let's see if I can get there. Yep, it works for me as an administrator. So I'll show you how to make an administrator. If you go to localhost php myadmin, login is your root. Click on the COMP-1006. Click on users. What you will notice is that you have this column called rule. And all of these rules will likely be general. Find the user you registered. So I'm going to choose this Yukon Cornelius. Does anybody get that reference? Yeah, you know Yukon Cornelius? No? Okay, you guys don't obviously watch the Rankin Christmas specials. All right, down here where it says General under Role, double click it. You'll get a little pop-up. Click the pop-up and change it to a min, and then click off, and it will auto-save. And now that user is an administrator. Or if you want to practice your SQL, you can go to the SQL tab and you can type out a raw update command if you wanted to do it that way. So once again, I'll change Bobby B here. I'm just double clicking on general, changing it from general to a min, and then I click off and it auto saves. That person now becomes an administrative user. So now that you have an administrative user, log out, log in as your administrative user. Okay? And you should know they're an administrator because you should see the users. If you don't see users, they're not an administrator. Now, like I said, I was going to show you also how to log into two different accounts, right? Normally, you can't do that within one browser because you only get one session. So you can't create another user account because you don't have a separate session, right? But what you can do is you can be cheeky. You can right-click on your Chrome, and you can choose a new incognito window. If you're using Firefox, Safari, Opera, Internet Explorer, you're on your own. Create your own damn incognito. I know how to do it from Chrome. I don't know how to do it from the others. But you need an incognito window because it doesn't have your session, right? It'll be a brand new session. So there we go. I'm incognito. I can still access my page, right? COMP-1006. There's my page. Notice I'm not logged in. I'm completely logged out. So I'll choose my ASDF person because I know they're a general user. And I'll log in as my ASDF user. And I know I'm in general because I don't have the users option, right? So there we go. I now have two Chrome instances, right? This one and this one, these two here. This one's an administrator. This one isn't an administrator. Okay, so I've got those two instances. And by the way, I'm jumping windows using Alt-Tab, in case you didn't know about Alt-Tab, which I'm pretty sure you probably do by this point. All right. So if I try to access this page from my general user, right? So if I come up here and I go, I'm going to hack this. I'm going to go directly to users. This is my general user. They're not an administrator. They should not have access to this page. It should redirect them to home. And I hit enter. Sure enough, it works. So our logic is sound. We're good. I make it sound like I had doubt, but I don't have any doubt. I knew it worked. Incidentally, I'm not doing this from notes. My tablet died a while ago, so we're winging it. All right, so that's all we need in here. The other page we have to deal with is the show page. That gets a little trickier because you have to consider these aspects. I can view my own personal profile. That's allowed. As a general user, I am not allowed to view your profile, right? Only mine. But as an administrator, I can view anybody's profile. So we have multiple conditions we need to be aware of, right? So let's do that page because that's probably one of the more difficult ones. So that's show.php that we're opening up. And you'll notice our config is on line 13. Why don't we move that? So if you highlight it or just even put your cursor on it, if you're in VS Code, you can actually hold down Alt and press up and it will move. That's in VS Code. So you hold Alt and you can move it up or down like that. If not, just copy it, cut it, and paste it. but let's put it at the top. And the reason we're doing that is we basically want to change that if they're not validated the way they should be, then what we'll do is we'll just leave the page altogether before we do any MySQL work or anything like that. Just make it a little bit more efficient. Now we can write this in a few steps. We can do if not authenticated. So if you're not logged in, redirect to base path. So we can do that, right? And maybe breaking these apart might be a little bit easier. And that's applicable to anybody, whether you're an administrator or a general user. If you're not authenticated, you're not allowed to be there, right? Next one, if, and this is tricky, if $_get ID, okay, so that's the ID that's in the URL, right, does not match, this is where it gets really tricky, does not match _session user ID. So if the get ID they're requesting does not match the user ID that is currently stored in the session, and this is super important, you are not an administrator, right? So not admin, redirect to base path. So if your ID does not match, if the get ID that you're asking for in the URL does not match the session user ID that you're logged in as, and you're not an administrator, then I'm going to redirect you. But if they don't match and you are an administrator, that's okay, because administrators are allowed to manage profiles, so they can see any profile. That's totally fine. So if it's not an administrator, you can't access that page. So that logic should be all we need. If you're not authenticated, I redirect you. Otherwise, I check to see if you're you and you're managing yourself as a general user, or I check and see if you're managing somebody else as an administrative user. Either way, those are the only ways those are allowed to happen. You can put this on one line, and I did do that yesterday, but it made it really long and kind of annoying. What you can do is take auth, put it here and say not auth, or, and then take this whole line and wrap it in a set of parentheses so it's treated as one condition. But it gets a little bit confusing to read. All right. Anybody still typing that out? Nope. Awesome. Jump back over to your browser. Let's try the non-authenticated user, right? And I know they're not authenticated because I don't have the users thing here. Just click on the My Profile button. Come up into your URL and change the number to some other number. So I'm going to try accessing user 20 and hit enter. See, it kicks me back. I can't access user 20, but I can access myself. Good, that works. Okay, so as a general user, you should not be able to change that number and access a different user. If I choose my administrative user, I'm on the profile, right? I'm just going to adjust this to user 23 and hit enter. And sure enough, I can access user 23. And that's because I'm an administrator and I should be allowed to do that. The last check, log out, right? Be the sneaky hacker here. Go to users, show.php, ID equals, and I'm going to try to access user 20, and I can't. It kicks me back because I'm not logged in, right? So I can't access it if I'm not logged in at all. Doesn't matter what I'm trying to access. Can't access that page. Good. Can't access another person's account if I'm a general user. Good. Can access anybody if I'm an administrator. Good. We have all three of those situations handled. So that's show.php and index.php. Now we need to handle one other process. if I log in as asdf.asdf.com, once again, I don't have the options here, but I can get to new.php. I can get to this page still, and I can register a brand new user. I shouldn't be allowed. I don't have a valid reason why. It's just weird, and you shouldn't be allowed. If you're already registered as a user, you shouldn't be able to register another user. That doesn't make sense. You shouldn't be able to do that. As an administrator, though, you can go ahead and create brand new users all the time. That happens quite often. You get somebody who doesn't quite understand the application and they need assistance, so you register for them. Been in that situation before. But as a general user, you should not be able to register somebody else while you're already logged in. You can log out and do it the long way. All right, so to stop them from accessing this page, the logic is basically the same as what we were looking at before. There's one minor difference. Let's go ahead and open up the new.php page. We'll go to the very top and just under our config, so new.php, we're going to create an if condition. And the if condition is going to look like this. If you're authenticated, so that means if you're logged in and you're not an administrator, okay? See how this kind of reads nicely? If you're authenticated and you're not an administrator, then sorry, but we're redirecting you back to home. So if you are authenticated and you're not an administrator, you're going to be sent home. And that logic actually handles our whole scenario. You can be logged in and be an administrator, and then you are totally allowed to register a new user. But if you are a general user and you're logged in, you'll get kicked back to home. If you're not logged in at all, you'll still be able to register as a new user. So it covers all three scenarios. All right. Anybody still typing that out? Yep. Okay. I'll give you a second. Yeah. No, because if you do if not admin and the user is not logged in, it will kick them back to home. Yeah. We need to verify that they're at least authenticated. Like at that first check, we don't so much care about the role. It's just, are you logged in? Because that tells us this is a different environment. We're in a different scenario. Good? All right. So I'm going to go back to my browser. I'm going to start with my general user, or sorry, this is my administrative user. I'm going to log in as my administrative user because I logged out, unfortunately. Okay, so here I am. I have my users drop down, and I'm going to click create a new user, and I can access this page just fine. Yeah. Now, I'm going to go back to my general user. Notice there's no users here, right? I'm going to hit refresh on this page, and I get kicked back. I can't access it. If I click up here and type in users/new.php, I still can't access that page. However, we have one minor logic issue. Our new.php page is technically not the form, right? We actually access the form from an external file and pull that file into that page and render it, which means the user can just go directly to the form. They can now fill out the form and submit the form. So to stop them from accessing this, we need to duplicate that logic that is sitting on our new.php page into our _form.php page. So we're not going to rewrite this logic. We're going to copy it. So Control C, we're just going to copy it directly. We're going to open up the underscore form.php page. And at the very top of the page, we're going to paste that logic in. We have one other step to do here. We need to change these includes on new.php and the form to include underscore once. So it only ever gets included once, and we don't wind up trying to redefine constants twice. So include once. And then save that and do the same thing on the new.php. Make sure you change it to include underscore once. Okay? So these two lines on both new.php and form.php. Same two lines. And that will stop the user from being sneaky and jumping to the form page and trying to bypass our new. Yeah. Incidentally, all of this in a model view controller system becomes so much easier because you only have one point of access. They're always going through the index.php page, the home page. All of the code winds up going through that page. Every single view you look at goes through that page, which means restrictions also go through that page. Everything gets handled through that page. And you use something called a router, which can restrict access to specific paths, and you just define all your restrictions in one file. Super simple, so much easier than this type of stuff. And cleaner, because it's not duplicate code in 90 places. All right, good? Not good? Maybe good? Yeah, good? I can't tell, there's so much conversation. Good? Yep. And you should be able to. Yep. Because you can register as a new user. I mean, if you want a horrible experience by accessing just the form.php page, doesn't bother me in any way, right? You can make it different. So that gets a little trickier though, because then we need to sniff the URL that they're coming in on. So we actually take the URL path and we look at the path. If the path ends in underscore form.php, we redirect them back to new.php. So we just auto redirect them. Do you guys want to see how that's done? Kinda? All right. I don't know off the top of my head which one it is, but it is a property of the global variable, the super global $_server. So we'll var dump it because I need to find out which one is the path. So that super global actually contains all information about the request that is occurring. So everything to do with the request, where they came from, where they're going, what browser they're using, their IP address, all that information gets stored in that super global. Everything about your current user is in that variable, whether they're logged in or not, all sitting inside there. So just these three lines for now. And what we're going to do is we're going to go look at that variable and we're going to find the one property that is actually spitting out the path of the URL. And then we can use that to kind of sniff and redirect if they're on the wrong route. Which means it would actually negate this line in the end if we do it that way. It'll wind up negating that line. All right, jump over to our browser. Refresh. It actually doesn't matter which browser you go. Oh, wait, hold on. Let's, it needs to be the administrative browser. Yeah, it's got to be the administrative browser because they're the only ones that currently can access form.php. All right, there's a whole whack of information in that super global, like just tons. So at the top, we can see our current host. That's where your domain name would be. So if it was SeanMcKinnon.ca, that instead of saying localhost would be SeanMcKinnon.ca. Our connection is keep alive. The upgrade, the user agent I'm using right now, which is Safari. Sorry, it's Chrome actually. No, that's a weird user agent. Oh, that's just the friggin' parser. The secular fetch user, I don't know what that is. What I'm accepting is normal. Fetch site path. There's path, but that's not what we want because that's definitely the wrong thing. System root, path extension, signatures, Apache, localhost, HTTP. One of these should say _form. Yeah, we have a bunch of them. We have script file name we could use. Request URI, I think, is probably the best one because some of these, that's one big problem. Some of these, guys, some of these are not supported in other browsers because the browser you're actually rendering this in also comes into issue with the server. Some of these are not available, right? So your request method might not be there, or it might remove the remote port or something like that. So request URI or PHP self, both of those should work. However, we only need this last chunk. So what we'll do is we'll get the request URI, we'll explode it by the backslash, right? That will create an array with all those values in it, and then we'll grab the last value of the array. That's basically what we'll do. So it's a little bit of a logic, it's a little bit of a mind bender, but it makes sense. So I'm just going to double click on that and copy it because I'm not going to remember it from here to the next page. And I'm going to create a variable called path equals _server, Control V. So there's my path. I'm going to create a variable called path parts. And I'm going to explode. The first thing I'm exploding is the delimiter that I want to explode on. So that's the character I want to explode on. I want to explode on that slash character. And I'm going to give it the variable path. So now I'll have an array back. And I don't know if this accepts -1, but if it does, that would be really awesome. I want the file name, which should be, if I can do this, I hope I can do this, -1. So this does work in most languages. If you do -1, it will give you the last item in your array. Ruby has one that's really more, it's a lot more readable. It's .last. So much more readable. Does Java have that? If you want to grab the last element, does it have a .last and a .first and things like that? No. Oh, right. The hard way. Yeah. Actually, what's really funny about Ruby, you also have .second, .third, .fourth, .fifth, .sixth, .seventh, and all the way up. You can even do 40 seconds. Stuff like that. Because the language is built to be readable. So it should read just like a sentence, basically. All right. I don't know if this is going to work. We'll see. Let's just check and see what we've got. So we'll do file name. We'll just var dump it to see if we actually got the file name. Oh, I did this way harder than we needed to do it. Too late now. This is good, but we did it way harder than we needed to do it. I don't know why I didn't think of this. No, you know how we created our base path and our root path way back in like week 3? Those will actually give back the file name. You can actually just request the file name itself, which means we could just request the file name, which would be form.php, and then we could just verify it that way. Anyways, this type of stuff is still fun. Yeah, it doesn't understand -1. So unfortunately, you got to do this the really annoying hard way, which is count $path parts -1, and then wrap that whole thing in a set of parentheses so it executes first. That's the equivalence to length minus 1. So there might be a PHP function for grabbing the last element. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's end. That makes that really easy. Just end. That's cool. That'll grab the last element. And I bet you the other one is start, if you wanted the first element. So just end path parts. And then Alt-Tab, Control-R, Control-R. There it is, underscore form.php. And now, all we have to do is say, if $file name equals underscore form.php, redirects to base path. Actually, I'm wrong. The directory name way that we did when we set our things wouldn't work because it's from the current file you're in, which means when this file loads, it would actually trigger this, which we don't want to happen. We only want this to happen if the user has requested this file directly. So we definitely need to do it the way we did it. That's the only thing that will work. So this is correct. So probably it would be handy to say, this will redirect if user accesses the form directly. Gets request path, or the URI, splits path into parts, array, grabs last element in the array, the file name, redirects if file name is the same as the form. And I think we'll stop after this spot. All right. We still typing? Yes, no, yes, no, okay. I will say this is probably the most advanced thing we've written so far. We haven't written anything. You might disagree, but this is the most advanced thing we've written so far. This is more meta programming level. All right, if you jump over to your browser, sorry, jump over to the browser. We'll choose this one here. If I refresh, it should redirect back now, right? But if I access users, create a new user, I can still access the page. It's only if I go to underscore form.php directly that I'll get bounced back, right? And because that logic basically takes care of itself, this authenticate not admin can die in a fire because we don't need it. this takes care of the whole issue with that page anyways. So we basically prohibited them from accessing this page directly. And if you like this type of thing, turn it into a function in the helpers, because there's nothing in here. Yeah, you could turn this into a helper thing and just pass it that argument. That'd be it. And you can attach that to any includes page so that you can restrict access to those includes page if you wanted to do that. So say you didn't want people accessing the header.php directly, you could create this as a function and just add _header.php, and it would do the same thing. It would stop them from accessing pages you don't want them to access. Cool, that was fun. I actually enjoyed doing that. That was pretty fun. Little minor hackathon. All right, why don't we call it quits? Next week, we will finish adding in the authentication checks to create, and is it just create.php left? Yeah, it'd be just create.php left. So we'll add the authentication checks there. Then we're going to do edit, update, and destroy, and then that's it. We are done with users. Then the following week, we're going to do child and parent relationships. Our child-parent relation is going to be posts, like blog posts, and comments. So you'll be able to add comments to a blog post. So the general user will be able to add a comment. The administrative users will be able to create a post. All right. See you guys next week.